Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So this is session 4 of the Sutta Studies for the Rains Retreat 2023. And the general theme today is about Sila, usually translated as morality. And in the 3 trainings grouping of the Eightfold Path, there's 3 factors: right speech, right action, right livelihood. And I can probably cover all of them today, since they're all basically similar in a way, as far as Sila goes. Same principle. But before I launch into the theme, I should make a correction from something I said last week. If anybody ever noticed. Anyway, when I mentioned about the 5 ways the Buddha suggested to deal with distracting thoughts. The first one of them was where you change your focus of attention, and the distracting thoughts the Buddha put down to greed, aversion, delusion. I forgot to mention the ways to deal with delusion. Just another form of delusion, Anyway, so to summarize briefly, the Buddha gave some particular meditation themes or topics to deal with these distracting thoughts, greed, aversion, delusion. So if you have thoughts recurring dealing with greed, like for example sensual lust, then the usual theme would be to try to contemplate the unbeautiful aspects of the body, the asubha, which is either the 32 parts of the body or the body in the various stages of decay. If the greed is for physical objects or inanimate objects, perhaps a meditation on impermanence can be helpful. The new shoes which you're so enamored by, as soon as you wear them, they're going to get dirty, they're going to get scuffed, they're not going to be so beautiful anymore. If there's aversion towards a person, then of course the meditation on metta, friendliness, can be helpful. If it's towards an inanimate object, then perhaps a meditation on the 4 elements. If you're constantly annoyed with your malfunctioning computer, just if you contemplate, it's just earth, just fire, just water, air. It's one of the 4 elements. It's a combination of these 4 elemental qualities, that's all. Can you be angry at earth? But maybe it helps to kind of resolve it. And then delusion. The thoughts are mainly about delusion, and of course delusion manifests in a variety of ways. Probably the most common one is just general confusion. If we feel confused, uncertain, don't know what to do, then it's usually caused by thinking too much. Trying to have a conceptual answer to some complex issue, then just stay with the breathing. The breathing meditation, especially a non-conceptual meditation object, will help to take you out of your head, and it'll help to settle. Especially something like breathing, which is very relaxing and very calming, help to settle the turbulent thoughts. If the delusion is more the doubting kind, uncertainty, a doubt about yourself, your own abilities, or doubt about the teachings, then you can either consult or seek out a teacher, or consult the scriptures. Trying out what the Buddha said about it, about this form of uncertainty you have. If you have particular questions about certain parts of the scriptures, it's all in the Buddha scriptures. And I would suggest that it's better to listen to what the Buddha said. There's so many books on Dhamma around now that a lot of them are just interpretations. And it still amazes me about how people still misunderstand what the Buddha's talking about. But I guess there are a lot of, sometimes if you're unenlightened, you write books to convince yourself but now we have access to the Buddhist scriptures themselves, the word of the Buddha, so better to go back to the source, I would say. So anyway, that's hopefully correcting my mistake for those who were listening carefully and missed it or noticed it. But the general theme today, under the title of Sila, and unfortunately the word Sila has very, very many meanings. It's used in different connotations, so it can be a bit confusing sometimes. But the word Sila in general, it means character or temperament. But most of the time people think of Sila, morality, as a group of rules to follow. But really, morality, Sila, is more than just following some rules. It's a whole way of being. It's a way of how we relate to the world, how we approach the world, how we deal with individuals who live in the world in social contexts. And if you remember from the discussion on kamma, the 3 roots of unskillful kamma, right? This is a bit of homework, just a test here. Who's listening last time? The 3 roots of unskillful kamma: greed, aversion, delusion. Here you are back again to the 3 unskillful, distracting thoughts: greed, aversion, delusion. Well, in the first 2 of the factors of the Eightfold Path, right view, in its ultimate form, anyway, will counter delusion. If we really understand the way things really are, no more delusion. And the right aspiration, the second factor towards renunciation, is very helpful towards countering greed. Renunciation is giving up, literally, it's nekamma. So it's literally renouncing sensual distraction, sensuality, sensual disturbances. And then the aspiration towards non-ill will and non-harming counters aversion. So we have already those, just the first 2 factors already. If you can practice them, they already counter these, unwholesome roots of bad karma: greed, aversion, delusion. However, you also may notice that they are just thoughts, right? They're mental qualities, view and aspiration. So unless they are grounded in our everyday life, in how we live in the world, how we speak and what we act, it's a danger they're just left as nice ideas or noble ideals. But they aren't actually grounded in how we live. Just, oh yeah, very nice, yes. Wonderful to be free of greed, but how do I do it? How does it manifest in life? How can I put into practice, really? So this is where I would say the word Sila is very useful, very helpful. And the Buddha gave in these 3 factors of Sila, of the Eightfold Path: right speech, right action, right livelihood. This covers pretty well, all of our activities, all the kamma we make. Kamma means action, right? And we do action through body, speech, and mind. So there's bodily action, there's speech, and the mind is dealt with ideally by the first 2 factors: right view, right aspiration. So just to go through these I guess it's 4 ways of right speech, 3 ways of right action, then there's right livelihood. That's that, 4 and 3, 7, 8. Hey, 8-fold path, 8 right Sila too, correct Sila. And like I say, it's if we can try to follow these are like principles to follow. It's important to keep in mind, I think, that in Buddhism, the morality is not dictated by some external authority, It's not a commandment from some higher power, which most of us probably have learned in school. Either in our cultural background, at least in Western culture anyway, or even in perhaps our schooling. The rules are laid down by the principal, or the boss or somebody, you see. But in Buddhism, they come from the law of karma, the law of nature. So, in other words, there's no escaping. The danger with seeing morality as imposed from outside, that people don't internalize it. They don't actually realize it's to do with guidelines for skillful living for us, not trying to please some external power. So people who can't do that, then they try to try to see what they can get away with when the power is not watching, right? But of course, God is everywhere, right? God is watching you all the time. So. Buddhists have no excuse. It's the law of karma, so you can't hide away from the external authority. You see? It happens automatically. It's just the law of nature, automatically. Cause and effect, cause and effect. See? So these principles are, designed to. I would define them just for the sake of giving a new definition as guidelines for skillful living, rather than morality. We have the word morality has been it has so many different unpleasant connotations, like dictated from outside, for example, imposed upon us. But in Buddhism, the guidelines for skillful living, and ideally you should know the cause and effect relationship. It's not a matter of just following the rules, it's understanding why we do it. They are helping us to counter greed, aversion, delusion. That's why. They're for our own benefit that way. Not just to look like a good person in society and get our merit badges, but to help us live skillfully in the world to reduce suffering. The main cause of suffering, of course, is that this karma, most of the karma, even though it's based upon intention, most of it, is not very skillful intention, so it happens anyway. We have very little control over it. We're conditioned by certain factors, by greed, aversion, delusion, which has been, for many of us, has sort of been programmed into our way of being. Just if you look at television. Fortunately, we don't look at television, right? But when I'm visiting my family, it's one of our social events, watching television together, with all these commercials. And you're bombarded with greed, buy this, buy that, get this, with a message that when you get this, you'll be happy. Well, how long have we been doing that? People really any happier? No. But whole society's based upon consumption and consuming all the time. It's a greed society, or it's also an aversion society. The bad guys over there, we're the good guys, certainly. But we have to be able to live our own truth. Look within ourselves and see, does that really make us happy? To have more possessions? Just find you need more things to wash and more things to clean. And no. What does anger do to you? Hating somebody. That's not very skillful, is it? Doesn't make you happier, does it? Anyway, the reason, and of course in that wider context of the three trainings, wisdom gives rise to morality. You see the value of morality then when you know cause and effect, the value of living skillfully, and then skillful living, they say, gives a foundation for meditation, for developing meditation practice. You have less, wandering thoughts. If you're living within these boundaries, your life basically is simplified. You don't have to worry about, being accused of killing somebody, about stealing. You keep within the certain boundaries, and a lot less things to feel worried about or guilty about. Your mind is already reasonably calm, ideally. Provides a deeper foundation for deeper levels of calm then. So the reason, the Buddha said here, he gave one teaching, skillful conduct gives freedom from remorse as its gain advantage. Freedom from remorse gives delight as its gain and advantage. Delight gives joy. Joy gives tranquility. Tranquility gives well-being, which is sukha. Well-being gives concentration, samadhi. Concentration gives knowledge and vision of things as they really are. And knowledge and vision gives disenchantment, dispassion, and liberation, finally. So indeed, Ananda, skillful conduct gradually leads on to the highest, from morality all the way up to liberation. Because there's a cause and effect relationship. Freedom from remorse, you feel lighthearted, glad. It gives joy, piti, and then sukha, piti sukha, tranquility. Yeah, sound good? Not quite as easy as one paragraph, but
Makes sense.
you make sense. Yeah, so most of us need some things to make sense before we do it. So, so it's not a matter of just following these guidelines to please somebody or some power, but to realize these positive qualities of mind, concentration, tranquility, concentration, etc., liberation. So the Buddha gives these, if I just read them out so you're familiar with what it means, the 4 kinds of right speech. And, these, unfortunately, they're sort of presented in a negative way, refraining from these unskillful ways of speaking, for example, or acting, you see. But the point of it is it allows us to be aware of, that's not skillful speech, that's unskillful speech. We're aware of it, because many times we don't even recognize, like in some places, speaking untruthfully isn't an issue. It's okay to tell the odd lie, as long as it's not too big, it's little ones. White lies. As long as it's not too blatant, But I think why in the precepts, for example, the Buddha put for the speech one, it was just one, refraining from lying. But I think why that's so important is because my speculation, the Buddha's teaching is aimed at realizing the truth, the way things really are. So even little lies is distorting the truth. Little distortion, you start to get, everything gets distorted then. Little lies lead to bigger lies. Wasn't there somebody says something like, you tell one lie, then you're going to tell a lie to cover up the first lie. Another lie to tell about, cover up the next lie and the next lie, and before you know it, you're way down the track of deception and delusion. So. But there are other kinds of harmful speech or unskillful speech also. So renouncing false speech, musavada. They abstain from false speech. They speak truth, adhere to truth, are reliable and trustworthy, and do not deceive the world. So even little small things, you don't try and deceive anybody. Even if it might be embarrassing or humbling or something or other, whatever it is, the amount of books you've read is a lot. Well, maybe it's a few. Maybe it's a little bit. And some cultures are great at speaking in superlatives, Fantastic. Really? Well, it was okay. Well, yeah, fine. You have to be very careful when what you say, because sometimes maybe even you don't even consciously think you're deceiving people, but it becomes so common, your habit of speech, that you don't even notice that the intention or behind it, or the motivation behind it is deception in some ways. So renouncing slanderous speech or malicious speech, they abstain from slander. Having heard something here, they do not announce it over there. And they reunite those who are divided, a promoter of friendships, rejoicing in concord, devoted to concord, delighting in concord, a speaker of words, furthering concord. So that's sort of, you say, malicious speech, slanderous speech, gossip. I guess, gossip, I think, is negative, isn't it? Gossiping about somebody. And then there is refraining from unkind or malicious speech. Malicious. Harmful speech, unkind. They abstain from unkind speech. They speak words which are gentle, pleasant to the ear, lovable, agreeable, polite. They're desirable and pleasing to many people. Pleasant speech, you don't have to, falsely praise them or something, but you have to be careful sometimes not to overpraise, but you're trying to speak harmonious speech and gentle speech. And then they renounce frivolous speech. That is, speech that's unnecessary. Wood explains it more in detail here. They speak at the right time, speak what is true, speak what is good. Speak on Dhamma and Vinaya. They speak words which are worth treasuring, timely, reasoned, measured, and beneficial. So if you're following this to the letter, probably we wouldn't talk very much. What's the talk?
Fail.
Speak only in Dhamma Vinaya. Not about recipes. Well, maybe your recipe is worth treasuring, timely and reasoned, measured and beneficial. But and now I would also say, that in the modern age, in the Buddhist time, the only way to communicate was by speech. People were taught verbally, no books around. And they only could use speech as a means of communication. But nowadays, we have emails and letters and whatnot. So this is really, I would say, since speech was used for communication, this would in modern days should be maybe right communication. How many of us have sent off nasty emails and regretted it ever since? So you weren't speaking, but you're writing something and somebody heard it, read it, and in a sense heard it internally, and has the same effect as harsh speech, So, or even lying speech maybe too. You can write things, and especially I find with something like emails they're so short and usually succinct. You want to just and it can be really easily misunderstood. I've had some communication with some people, and we were like talking two different languages. It's not what I meant, Finally, I had to phone this person up and talk to them. Oh, that's what you mean, because there's so many things lost in just the written word, the nuances of your speech and the pauses and whatnot, and the laughter maybe or something, the lightness of it. And then, of course, even better if it's face to face, because you can see the body language rather than just the so-called words that come out. You see. So then, that's speech. 4 kinds of right speech. And then there's right action. Kamanto. Ways to sort of our skillful actions we do, and just in the general one. So the first right action is refrain from killing. Second one is to refrain from stealing. The third one is refrain from, you could say, inappropriate sexual behavior, which I guess, it's these days, I guess you got to put it down to something like illegal maybe. I don't know, because the cultures these days have different standards to follow nowadays. And there are certain standards they had in the Buddhist time which maybe don't apply these days, and vice versa. So wherever you live, you would say inappropriate. You got to look at I guess the ruling is, the laws of the country are, I guess. Yeah. And then of course these 7, there's various degrees, especially the actions, various degrees of refinement. Like to refrain from basically it's refrain from killing living beings. And there is sort of like, I would say, a continuum. The worst is, the very heaviest karma is to kill your parents. Somebody who's killed their parents, mother or father, cannot ordain as a monk this lifetime. It's the heaviest kind of karma. Second level is to refrain from killing a human being. But even that, you recognize that there's different intentions involved. Just like the law recognizes, consciously killing another human being is what does it call it? Is murder, right? I guess. Yeah, you say intentional murder. But then there's manslaughter. When you like in defense. There's all kinds of other varieties, I guess. There's when I was in England, I was a prison chaplain. I don't know if I can talk about this because maybe it's private, but anyway, there were a variety of people I met in the prison who were there for different reasons. There was if we should talk about it or not, but anyway, you say if they were really a Buddhist, they wouldn't be in prison in the first place. But some people, like one guy, he had a lapse of his precepts, but he was drunk, and there was other circumstances, why he got so violent, you see, and so he got a minimum term. He was not a professional criminal, as it were. He just had a lapse of, he was drunk, and then he had a lapse of his mindfulness, I guess, serious lapse, and he went into a rage. They call it a crime of passion. They call it in French. Yeah? So he got a very minimum sentence, and then the vicar told me he'll be out his first parole because he's not, not a serious risk to the public. He just had this one lapse. Others were heavy dudes. I went to a maximum security prison. just coming near the place, can feel, wow, this is heavy vibes here. But in the Buddhist teachings, like even in the legal system, if you have killed person, if you've served your term, then you are exempted now from you've fulfilled your debt to society, you've fulfilled your karmic debt in a sense, So then if somebody who's killed somebody else, they finish their sentence, they can ordain as a monk. They can start over again. Then there is, killing a living being, killing an animal, for example. And Buddhism is still bad karma. Take the life of an animal even. Although in some cultures they don't recognize the animal has a soul. So it's okay to kill an animal. And insects, they also count as sentient beings. And actually the word panatipata, pana, is breathing. So it literally means, breathing beings. Refrain from killing breathing beings. I don't know, here's a joke. Mosquitoes have a long nose, so I assume that they're breathing. but are they breathing? I don't know. But so even killing an insect would be, I don't know if it's technically against the precept, but it's not a skillful thing to do. It's still, if you look at the activity, it's still aversion, isn't it? Your killing is a very, very strong expression of aversion. So whether it's, killing a human being is very hard. You need to make a real big effort. So it's a very, very serious type of aversion. And killing an animal, a little bit easier maybe. And killing an insect, just a few moments of thoughtlessness. But it's still aversion, isn't it? So you're still, by even killing an insect, you're still encouraging and feeding the aversion kamma, or attitude, intention anyway. So, and if you refrain from killing the insect, requires quite a bit of self-surrender. The opposite of aversion, metta, friendliness. Friendly, trying to be friendly and receptive to and open to, and okay, this, say, mosquito is just trying to survive. You think it's hurting me, but it just thinks, oh, there's a nice piece of tasty flesh. It doesn't think it's after you to annoy you and hurt you. It's just trying to survive. It's just instinct to survive. That's all. The poor creature. Anyway, if we understand these principles, we try to apply them ideally as best you can. And maybe sometimes, like somebody asked me one time, because they in the place they lived there was lots of dengue fever, and they were very worried about their children. And they were a Buddhist, so they said, I know that I shouldn't kill the mosquitoes, but I really fear for my children. If they get dengue fever, some of them will die, because it's very, very hard on children and old people, I think, dengue fever. So I said, well, you have to take into consequences the cause and effect consequences, the relationship, you see. So I mean, if you're really careless, and you say, well, I got to let all mosquitoes live, and my child dies, that's not using wisdom with your morality. But if you have this principle, refrain from killing, maybe you can find some other way to avoid killing the mosquitoes, but preventing them from attacking your children or being in your house or something. There's various methods. They have all kinds of repellents, and they have all kinds of sprays and stuff, and my sister, she lives in an area where lots of mosquitoes. She has a little kind of electronic mosquito repellent, I don't know if it works or not, but you can hear this buzz. Maybe it imitates a mosquito, or maybe it imitates a dragonfly, maybe, and chase the mosquitoes away. I don't know what the sound is, but I don't know what sound dragonflies make when they're chasing mosquitoes, but but rather than just say, oh no, I've got to kill mosquitoes because they don't count. Well, you're still, at the very least, it's sort of delusion, because you're still increasing your aversion to, I don't like mosquitoes. So, but sometimes you have to be reasonable, find out what's what with wisdom too. If you allow your child to die, then that's worse karma than killing the mosquito, actually. You see, so sometimes it takes some reflection, some contemplation. We have to live in the world, and one time, I think this is a well-known story, that at Wat Pah Pong, Ajahn Chah's monastery, some of the huts they built were riddled with woodworms, and so the builders said, well, what do we do? The monks can't live in these huts because the woodworm is gonna fall down eventually. And he said, I will take on the karma of spraying and killing them, he said, because I think it's more valuable that the monks have a place to live and meditate to get enlightened than to allow woodworms to live. Woodworms won't get enlightened. They just get fat and eat, and eat the kuti, eat the hut down, So it's a matter of, sometimes we have to compromise sometimes when we live in the world. You have to live in nature with insects and things, but having this as a principle, you think about it, how can I avoid, killing living beings? How can I avoid it? And try the best you can. And maybe at least you have a good intention to try to not disturb them or kill them anyway, see? That's important. And then we come to the factor of right livelihood. Unfortunately, in the scripture, it doesn't say very many details. It just says to refrain from livelihood which is based on scheming, talking, hinting, belittling, pursuing gain with gain. Which, if you read the footnote, which I did this morning, this is apparently what the Buddhist, the monks are forbidden to do as far as livelihood goes. They should just accept whatever offered to them. They shouldn't be, hinting, be nice to have, a little bit more, a little bit more this and that, and and trying to, maybe pursuing gain with gain means that they, if you offer me that, then I'll give you an amulet or something, some kind of blessing. Monks should be just be alms mendicants, receive whatever's offered to them with a generous heart, and not be particular about what they should have. See, but then if you look at those, at each person, if you say that the working person anyway spends 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, at a certain task. You're trying to follow these spiritual values, but your everyday life, your everyday job is detrimental to it. Then you're trying to develop meditation, for example, and you have a very, very stressful mental job using your brain, and you get stressed out. Maybe you have to find some other alternative, something which supports your spiritual practice, ideally. You have to measure, of course, you need material support. We have to have a certain amount of income to look after, have our requisites, our house and our food and things, But at the same time, if it's going to be soul-destroying work, is it beneficial? Beneficial for yourself, or even beneficial for society, And what is it doing to your heart? Is it really something which is you can really feel makes you more supportive of spiritual practice, creates an environment for spiritual practice, or not? So there is another scripture the Buddha gives specifically 5 different trades or business you shouldn't be involved in, a layperson. Is there a trade in weapons, trade in human beings, slavery, trade in flesh, trade in intoxicants, and trade in poisons. So trade in weapons, gun salesman, I guess. In human beings, you shouldn't engage in human trafficking. Anybody disappointed? Losing your job? No. Trade in flesh, of course, is a little bit controversial. Trade in flesh, I would say, would be not so much the supermarket selling the food, the meat, but the people who were involved in the slaughterhouse and in the killing. Buddha pointed out that it's the taking of the life which is the main negative kamma, taking of the life. Processing the meat afterwards is inconsequential, but it does have an effect in some ways. It's not directly, but indirectly. Somebody recently asked me when I was in Sri Lanka and in New Zealand. They asked me about, they knew about these principles. He wasn't even a Buddhist; he was a Hindu actually, but he had a job marketing meat. He said, "Was that right? Is that right livelihood? Marketing?" He wasn't anywhere near the slaughterhouse or the packing plant or anything. He was in the office as a marketing agent for meat. And I said, well, technically it's not wrong livelihood. But, how do you feel? He's a Hindu, he's vegetarian. Here he is working in a company that sells meat. How do you feel? There's something else here besides just what's the letter of the rule, so to speak, And he said, well, I recognize it doesn't make me, I don't feel really happy at my job doing something like that, he said. So I said, well, maybe, if you have to live with that, you have to do that 8 hours a day for 5 days a week, maybe you better find some other, alternative, If you're a salesman, then you can sell a lot of anything besides meat, and then don't sell alcohol either, and don't sell guns, and intoxicants, trade in intoxicants. You know, and there is, you know, then again another one, a little bit tricky in the Western countries because you know, drinking alcohol is not looked upon as against the precepts of most Western cultures. You know, but trading in alcohol, in intoxicants, you know, to Buddhism, in Buddhism, even alcohol is an intoxicant, right? Not just illegal drugs, but intoxicant is alcohol too. Trade in poisons. Well, what's a poison?
Arms. Oh, weapons are another one.
Yeah. Poisons will be, I don't know,
Rat poison.
rat poison or weed killer or something rather, I guess. Yeah. Well, again, it's you know, it's
Intoxic.
yeah. You can see. I mean, some of these are a little bit gray areas. There's no cut and dried. You know, like some people might think of tobacco as a poison or even an intoxicant. It does alter your state of mind, I guess. But for most people, it's you know, it alters their state of mind in a more positive way. It makes them more happy. But maybe it's a poison. They're actually poisoning themselves with the long term. They're ruining their health, maybe, you know. So I know sometime somebody gave us some cigarettes at the monastery, and none of us smoke. And then we thought, what to do with it? Should we give it away? No, maybe not. We were trading in poisons. Even to give away poison to where a tradie was not a good thing to give away. Encourage them to keep smoking, you know. So I think
You light the fire with it.
yeah.
Poor animals.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, sometimes you have to make these hard decisions, you know. Well, for us anyway, you know. So there's these are some people like simple numbers, simple answers to things. So you know, there's 7 of them here, you know, but sometimes put down to the basic 5 precepts, right? Refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and intoxication. Intoxication is not actually mentioned here as right, you know, wrong action, you know, but if you understand that the sila is to support constant meditation practice, it just makes sense. We refrain from intoxicants too, though it isn't specifically mentioned, but it's put in what they call the 5 precepts. To refrain from intoxication, the last one, is the last of the 5 precepts. Or there is the what's called the precepts for the Apostata day. Nowadays, you know, like I said, the word sila sometimes is used in a variety of meaning of contexts. Sometimes they say the Atta Sila, right? The 8 precepts, but it's not actually 8 precepts, 8 sila. It's not mentioned anywhere in the Pali Canon. It just says the practices on the Apostata day of 8 constituents. You know. So then there is the 5 precepts. One of them, this third one, changes to celibacy. Then there's 3 renunciant precepts. They're not moral precepts, they're renunciant. Renouncing supper in the evening and singing and dancing and luxurious sleeping places. The renunciant. So they have, you know, they're to simplify your life and support spiritual practice. You know, again, if you're trying to meditate, you know, and you also have a lot of music going through your brain, it's not very peaceful. And we try to cut down on the you know, like the jewelry, beautification of the body, to be able to see the body as it really is, rather than have to beautify it with scent or jewelry or something like this. And then there are a number of supports. Like I say, sila is more than just precepts and following rules. Usually when they talk about, for the lay person, Buddhist lay person, there's a number of other qualities are also pointed out, like the sampadas, the 5 sampadas. The first one is faith. Having faith in the Buddhist teachings. Many of you can say having faith or having trust in the value of these precepts. So sometimes maybe in your families you might be challenged. You know, if you go somewhere and your relatives are drinking alcohol or something, and then you say, well, no, I'm a Buddhist, I don't do that or something, then they maybe, can become unpleasant sometimes, maybe. But, if you recognize that these are something to support our own spiritual practice, I guess some people might say, well, okay, yeah, that's your belief system, okay, But sometimes you have to recognize that, we have to kind of compromise and recognize that if we have the trust in the Buddhist teachings that these precepts will be of benefit, then perhaps at least it'll come from the right place. There was one of our supporters in New Zealand, and he was had a job which the people in the office, they all had their happy hour on Friday, and he just said, I just don't do that. I keep the 5 precepts. But he had to go along with the gang. See, it was kind of like a bonding experience for the people in the law office. You see, he said, "Okay, I'll go there and just drink water." So he and one other person in the office, they also didn't drink, I think for health reasons. So, but when he was there with them, at the bar or whatever it was, and they're drinking away, then they noticed that, they were getting really strange and funny, doing stupid things. And he was perfectly sane watching them. So after a while, they didn't invite him anymore. And then as it worked out, some of the clients began to hear about this.
Right.
And then they thought, well, if I have to hire a lawyer, I think I'd be more safe hiring anyone. A lawyer is supposed to be confidential, you see. And you're working with somebody who gets drunk, doesn't know what they're saying. I wonder if I would actually pay that lawyer to work for them, pay to work for me. Do they really keep my confidential information? So he began to get more jobs because they knew he's sober all the time, you see, and he's definitely, confidential. Definitely doesn't forget what he's saying, you see. So even though it was awkward in the beginning for him, in the long term it was beneficial, and he could retire early because he had a lot of jobs, so he got a lot of money. So so it paid off in the end. So having faith, the 5 sampadas, faith, morality, generosity. Generosity also comes, you can say, it is kind of the foundation of spiritual practice, because even if following the precepts, trying to follow the precepts, we have to do surrender, to give up our own opinions and our own habits. We have to give them up. If you're grew up in a situation where it was a habit to go hunting, for example, hunting and fishing, that was common in Canada. I personally recognized that I had no interest to actually hunt or kill anything, But you go along with your buddies or my father was a fisherman. He went fishing. I just sat in the boat and looked at the waves. Fortunately, he was such a bad fisherman, he hardly caught anything. So we didn't have much of with killing anything. We just sat in the boat, watched bobbed along the sea. But in some cultures, it is, you got to go along with the guys or something or other, and it's complicated sometimes. So, but if you have a generosity in your heart, then you can let it go. You have to renounce it, give it away, relinquish it, and maybe even you have to relinquish some of your friendships. People who are not very skillful, and if they pull you into ways of unskillful living, you have to renounce them and give it up. And, if you don't benefit, then there is learning and wisdom for the 5 sampadas. And then there is a few supports for the precepts for sila. And the most important one is called Hiri-ottappa. Hiri-ottappa, you heard of that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's basically I would say it's personal and social conscience. Yeah, it's usually defined as hiri as a sense of shame, and ottappa as a sense of dread. So the sense of shame, I would say personal conscience, is just in your own heart. you have a natural sense of shame of wrongdoing, doing something wrong. If you have attempted to steal something, oh no, that's not correct. It's not a good thing to do. I feel ashamed of that thought in my mind. And then the otapa is a social conscience. You be blamed by other people for your misguided actions or something, your unskillful actions. Yeah. The Buddha calls them the guardians of the world. And they are. I think probably each person has certain degree of it naturally. If I were reflecting upon going hunting with my friend, I really did not want to shoot anything. He was going to go out. We're going to go out. We're going to shoot a deer. You see, and I just what? Deer are so cute, but I wanted to go. I wanted to be friends, and go off with this guy. So we went off hunting. He gave me this gun. I never fired a gun before. What do you do with it? And we were creeping along through the bush, and I was thinking, "Deer, hide, hide! I don't want to see a deer. I don't want to see a deer. I don't know what." Unfortunately, we never saw anything. I think I made so much noise I scared them away. But he didn't notice. He came back. Well, we'll try again next time. It never happened again. But and then there were also some supports, some helps to help us keep the precepts. Some of these they're put in the context of course, meditation practice. For example, putting a guard at the senses, putting a guard at your sense doors, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thought. If you have a guard there, you recognize, this is partly to do with, the meditation practice, probably come across it with right concentration, the last factor. But, it's through the senses which we receive impressions, and we make sense of them then. We decide what they are, what to do with them, and then you recognize that some of them, just with, you recognize these distracting thoughts. There's certain kind of sense impressions stir up unskillful thoughts. If you're in a loud place, a noisy place, a busy place, what's your state of mind? You're in a place like went through a few airports recently, and it's all about buying things and people going there and going somewhere to have a holiday or something or other. And some people are misbehaving. They're already had a few drinks already, and they're going on holiday, right? They can hang loose. And it's not some people say it's a good place to meditate because it's a challenging place to meditate. So you got to really test yourself to live in a noisy place and with all these distractions and things. But it's not a place that I want to spend a lot of time in. But when you begin to notice, if you put a guard at the sense doors, you can perhaps observe, just what these different impressions will do to you. Bringing up greed, aversion, delusion, or its opposite. So then you have some degree of control. Maybe you don't have so much control over your mind, but you have control over your environment. If you realize that, this is the effect, the cause is unskillful state of mind. The effect is an unskillful state of mind. The cause is this particular impression. This particular sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. So maybe I can't control my mind so much, but I can control the environment. So close your eyes from that unskillful sight. Go to a quiet place, not have so much disturbing sounds available to you. Smells, taste, touch, whatever. So if we put a guard at our senses, we get some idea just what the effect upon us is of these sense impressions and how we have some degree of control over it. So it can help us support. If you're in a situation where you're bombarded with unpleasant sensations, unpleasant impressions, it just stirs up aversion, natural. I must admit, I went to visit where my sister lives. It's really up in northern British Columbia, and it's in the bush, and it was bug season. Boy, there's some bugs there. and big ones, and all kinds. I must admit to noticing some aversion. I mean, it's relentless. Fortunately, they're prepared for it. So you get out your electronic mosquito repellent, you put your other repellent on, you put your hat on, you put your gloves on, you cover your whole body. You don't worry. Somebody wore their shorts. Wow, they got eaten alive. At least I didn't have shorts to wear. No.
Just this man.
Yes, yeah, I did well. My brother got a bit eaten because he had his shorts on. So. But he was swatting them too, so. Just with a fern, he wasn't killing them. He just keeping them away. But anyway.
Because you were there.
No. It wasn't me. No. We're all running from the mosquitoes, but I recognize that's not it wouldn't be that area a good place to go meditate unless you have a mosquito net or something. You see, so if you want to keep your cool, you got to look for a cooler place or quieter place anyway. At least in the beginning. Maybe later you can endure more challenges, but So anyway, the practice of sila, it's an ongoing practice because we have to, in our daily life, we speak, we act all the time, so if we recognize the value of trying to speak and act in a skillful way, we can say we have quite a bit of opportunity to practice in ordinary life. When you're sitting in the meditation hall with your eyes closed and, in a quiet place, not so many challenges, but when you have to relate to more normal situations, in the cooking meditation, right? Well, I'm sure it's very meditative in there. Two meditators in there. But it's just the weekends that are more challenging. Yeah. But knowing what these principles are, and we try to apply them best we can, and the purpose is to provide the right foundation for meditation, which is the theme for the next talk. Starting off next time, it'll be right effort. What is it? The sixth of the factors. Yeah. Okay.
Anmayan Dhammavargata Sadhu Sarang Dharamase Sadhu 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 Anumodam.
So any questions?
So the first one is talking about how right leg leaders. How about having a pet shop and selling dolls or cats?
Well, I guess the main thing is, what's the intention behind it? I mean, you're selling the animals to make people happier, ideally, right? People want a pet because they want to make them happy or makes them have a companion or something. They feel good about it. They aren't going to the pet shop to buy a pet to cook, are they? Hopefully. Expensive way to get supper, probably. Yeah. But they're doing it because they want to be happier. So you're facilitating their well-being, their happiness.
As long as the pets don't come from a pet farm where they.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess that's another thing too. You have to be able to recognize what the sources are.
Intention.
Yep.
And the second question is about right aspiration, because the right intention, right effort, and right mindfulness is kind of circling the right intention, right? So let's say, the other sutta class, you were giving the example of someone wants to give donation, and then suddenly they thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't give that much donation. So if we catch ourselves, let's say we haven't given the donation yet, but we catch ourselves, we want to donate, but then maybe not this much, and then maybe take some away. But at that moment when we catch ourselves, we can kind of correct our aspiration.
Yep.
But I've heard before, I don't know whether this comes from the sutta or from Abhidhamma, you have to have the intention of doing before, right intention before, during, and after you do it. So that means for one action of like wanting to donate something, you have kind of like more than one
Yep.
intention.
Yeah.
And then, but what I shouldn't give you that much. That means it's already too late because you already
You already blown it.
yeah.
But you can rejoice
But you
again.
can recognize that, and you can
recognize and rejoice again.
yeah, rejoice again. Yeah, say, oh no, that was an unskillful thought.
Unwholesome, yeah.
So I rejoice again in the generosity I've made. You know, I don't go into the donation box and take it out again. You know,
Because actually it happened to me. So I went and told the monk, this is my truth. I gave this, but I didn't realize this was the story. And I felt really sick that I gave it. So, and now I know that it's changed. So he said, oh, you recall and rejoice.
Yeah.
Rejoice. Because the mind is always changing.
yeah. I mean, it's like one intention.
Yes.
I mean, it's actually a whole series of intentions.
Yes.
You know, you're just a thought,
Mm.
but the thoughts are moving.
Yes.
You know, so it's not like you can. Most of us aren't able to maintain one intention through a whole continuous action.
Exactly. Yes.
You know, so you have to keep reinforcing it. You know, like I mean, even an act of generosity. I mean, you think about it, and then you gotta plan it. You gotta organize it. You know, like coming to the monastery, people gotta think, oh, I got a book, I got a certain date. Then they got to go shopping to get the food. Then they got to go and think about the cooking beforehand and how to get there and coming here and going to all the effort and making the offering and just making the offering at the end. It's only one part of it.
Yeah.
You know, all the other intentions along the way. You know, it could be days. By the time you think about coming to the monastery, the time you actually get here, you know, and those intentions are all building up. You know, continuing. You know, kind of thought by thought, intention by intention, they build up over the time and. Maybe you go to the shop and think, oh, it's too much work. I won't bother. I'll eat this myself. Well, you still got, those
So much good.
so much good from the initial intention anyway. You know, it hasn't really come to full fruition, but you still have good intention to even think that you might go to the monastery to make the offering, see? So, I mean, it's like 30%. So I say to some people, when they come here, make the effort to come all the way to Wat Buddhadhamma, they get 150% merit. See? Because if it's just a temple down the road, you just have to take a few steps down the road and make an offering. This doesn't take much effort. But to make the effort to come all the way out here, 2 hours of driving, the traffic and all that effort, on this dangerous road and all this, it's much more merit than just ordinary, It's not so easy, so I don't know if I can say that 150% merit or not, but but I mean it is more than just just an easy offering, see, to come all the way out to here to a remote place, see? So it's hard to measure sometimes, it's 150, 139. Yeah, when it's raining, yes, raining fire, you get 200%, yeah. Yeah. I don't know if the posties get more money when it rains, something. We get more merit when it rains, Yeah.
But is there like intrinsic positive karma from practicing metta, and particularly practicing metta with somebody in mind, or
Mm-hmm.
as a antidote to ill will? If you have a specific ill will towards somebody, practice metta for them, or even just for yourself, for beings around you.
Yeah.
Is that meditation practice particularly meritorious?
Yes, very meritorious, yeah. The Buddha said it was the second most beneficial meditation. The highest is vipassana, insight. Yeah. But to develop metta bhavana, friendliest meditation for, they say, time it takes to milk a cow, however long that is. I never milked a cow, but anybody ever milked a cow? 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
When I was a kid.
How long does it take?
5, 10 minutes.
5, 10 minutes, okay, yeah.
Bucket,
Yeah. So, yeah. But of course, he was probably saying that, implying that you're in metta absorption, you see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not just a few thoughts about it, but you're in deep absorption with with meditation for 5 minutes, and second most meritorious. And I would try and keep away from the word antidote, because we aren't trying to get rid of aversion. We're just trying to approach it in a more skillful way. See,
Truthful.
trying to get rid of aversion is aversion. You see, you're still stuck in the same loop. See, but friendliness allows us a bit of space around it, rather than fighting with it. You see, to understand what the real source of aversion is. There's a cause there somewhere. See? But most of us are so directed upon the effect of it or something, try and get rid of it or something. We aren't able to investigate. But friendliness allows us to come closer to it and perhaps see what's the real cause of it. Why is there aversion? And why don't you like that person? What's happened? There's a cause and effect relationship there. Till you get to the wisdom behind it, the cause, you're just going to cover it over with some antidote of keep smiling. You say, I love you. You're wonderful, girl. But you don't really mean it.
So, can I just add to that, Ajahn? If at that time you have now skillfully seen the teachings of the Buddha, and at that time I'd really see that this is stemming from my own view of what I want, and correct myself, that's also like it will grab a lot of merits, right? And let go and renounce of my want, as opposed to try to change the other party.
Yep.
That what sort of what sort of practice is that? Is that metta? Or?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, metta, I would say you can practice at many different levels. You see.
Is that metta? What is that we are practicing? When I say, okay, I'm angry now, not with the other person, but what I want is not happening.
Yep.
So let me just understand that I renounce what I want and accept what the other person is doing. What's that meditation?
Well, I mean, that metta can also be, it's just an open receptivity,
Okay.
openly receiving it. Normally we filter reality through my own preferences, you see.
Right.
And it takes a lot of friendliness to just receive whatever is there, you see.
To be in the receiving mind.
Yes, yeah. You can say at the ultimate, they say unconditional love.
Correct.
I mean, it's, but that's a pretty high standard, Just be able to unconditionally receive whatever is happening. Whether I like it or not, goes beyond all that. Yeah. Beyond my preferences. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a nice place to be once you...
Oh, if you can get there, yes, yes. No problems. Everything is okay. Yes.
But actually, if you set your mind to it and see the repercussions of effect of that, it becomes easy to do.
Yes, yeah. And once you've seen some results, then you get the confidence.
Yes.
The faith turns to confidence.
That's right.
You know now, so don't just trust in it, but you see it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, enough.
I don't have questions today.
Oh, okay, yeah.
All clear.
All clear. Okay.